Sometimes life hits you so hard, you forget what hope feels like. When Wes Holloway lost his wife to cancer, he thought his heart would never heal again. Now 54, and raising his 10-year-old daughter Emma alone, Wes was barely keeping their old Kentucky farm together. The chickens were sick, the bills kept coming, and every day felt like a struggle just to survive. Then one morning, while cleaning the chicken coop his grandfather built, Wes found something strange buried in the dirt. A huge egg, bigger than anything he'd ever seen, warm and glowing softly. He thought he was losing his mind from all the stress. But when cracks started spreading across the shell and something moved inside, Wes knew this was real. What was about to hatch would change his life forever. But what could possibly be inside that mysterious egg? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The October wind carried the scent of dying leaves across the Holloway farm, a gentle reminder that another season was ending. Wes stood at the kitchen window, watching Emma chase the last few healthy chickens around the yard, her laughter a sound that both warmed and broke his heart. She had Sarah's laugh, bright and infectious, though it came less frequently these days. 2 years since cancer had stolen his wife and left him drowning in responsibilities he'd never shouldered. Alone. The wedding ring on his finger caught the morning light, a simple gold band that he couldn't bring himself to remove. Sarah had slipped it onto his finger 32 years ago in the same little church where they'd later held her funeral. Some days. The weight of it felt heavier than all the grief combined. "Daddy!" Henrietta laid another egg, Emma called out, holding up a small brown egg with the reverence of someone who understood that even small victories mattered these days. Wes managed a smile and stepped onto the porch that sagged slightly on the left side, another repair he couldn't afford to make. The farmhouse had been in his family for 4 generations, built by his great-grandfather with lumber from the surrounding hills. Every weathered board, every creaking step, every room held memories that sometimes felt like ghosts. This was where he'd brought Sarah as a young bride, where they'd painted the nursery yellow because they wanted to be surprised, where they'd celebrated Emma's first steps and first words. The house remembered their happiness, even when Wes struggled to recall it himself. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," he said, descending the steps carefully. The third one had a loose nail that caught his boot every morning, but fixing it required energy he rarely had anymore. "Put it with the others, and we'll have enough for breakfast tomorrow." Emma nodded seriously, treating the egg like precious cargo. At 10, she possessed a maturity that sometimes startled him, a quiet wisdom born from loss that no child should have to carry. She never complained about their simple meals or the patched clothes or the fact that their old truck coughed and wheezed like an asthmatic horse. The chicken coop stood at the far end of the property, a sturdy structure his grandfather had built during the Depression. It had weathered decades of storms, sheltered countless birds, and provided eggs that had helped feed the family through lean times. Now it housed their dwindling flock, 12 chickens down from the 40 they'd kept when Sarah was alive. Wes opened the wire gate and stepped inside, immediately noticing the strange smell that had been growing stronger over the past week. Not the usual barnyard odors, but something else, something almost sweet, like flowers blooming out of season. 3 more chickens had died during the night, their still forms huddled in the corner like discarded toys. "Oh no," Emma whispered. Behind him, she'd followed him despite his unspoken wish to shield her from this latest disappointment. He knelt beside the dead birds, his weathered hands surprisingly gentle as he examined them. No signs of trauma, no obvious illness. They'd simply given up, the way he sometimes felt like doing. The vet had been out twice, prescribing expensive medications they couldn't afford for symptoms he couldn't identify. "What's wrong with them?" "Daddy?" Emma asked, her voice small and worried. Wes sighed, pulling off his baseball cap to run his fingers through graying hair. "I don't know, Em. Sometimes things get sick and we can't fix them, no matter how much we want to." It was a lesson. He'd learned too well. All the doctors, all the treatments, all the desperate prayers, none of it had been enough to save Sarah. Some battles couldn't be won, no matter how hard you fought. As he reached for the first chicken, intending to carry it to the compost pile, behind the barn, his fingers brushed against something unexpected. The dirt floor of the coop, usually hard-packed and level, had a strange depression near the back wall, almost like something was buried underneath. "Emma, hand me that shovel by the door." She complied without question, watching as he began to dig carefully around the disturbance. The soil came away easily, too easily, as if it had been recently disturbed. 6 inches down, his shovel struck something solid. "What is it?" Emma pressed closer, her earlier sadness forgotten in the face of this mystery. Wes brushed away the remaining dirt with his hands, revealing something that made him sit back on his heels in surprise. An egg, but unlike anything he'd ever seen, nearly the size of a football. Its shell was a creamy white color that seemed to pulse with a faint inner light. The surface was smooth and warm to the touch, radiating heat like a fever. "That's the biggest egg I've ever seen," Emma breathed, reaching out to touch it before pulling her hand back uncertainly. Wes lifted the egg carefully, marveling at its weight and the strange way it seemed to hum with energy. His rational mind scrambled for explanations. Maybe a duck egg, though no ducks lived on their property. Perhaps something from the neighbor's exotic bird collection, though he'd never seen anything like this. "Could it be from one of our chickens?" Emma asked. "No, sweetheart, our chickens couldn't lay something like this." He turned the egg in his hands, noting hairline cracks that seemed to shimmer and move in the morning light. "I don't know what kind of bird this came from." They stood in the dusty coop, father and daughter, staring at this impossible discovery. Outside, the wind rustled through the oak trees that Sarah had loved, the same trees where she'd hung a tire swing for Emma when she was 5. Those trees had watched over 3 generations of Holloways, silent witnesses to births and deaths, celebrations and sorrows. The farm itself stretched across 47 acres of rolling Kentucky hills, bordered by stone walls that Wes's great-grandfather had built stone by stone. Tobacco had once grown in the southern fields, then corn, then soybeans. Now, weeds claimed most of the acreage, while Wes focused his dwindling energy on keeping the house and the immediate surroundings from falling apart completely. Sarah had been the one with the green thumb, coaxing vegetables from the kitchen garden, nurturing the flower beds that had once blazed with color. She'd understood the rhythm of the seasons, known when to plant and when to harvest, when to rest the soil and when to push it to produce. Without her, Wes felt like he was stumbling through his days, making decisions without the benefit of her. Gentle wisdom. The bills arrived faster than the money to pay them. The machinery broke down more often than he could repair it. The isolation that had once felt peaceful now pressed against him like a weight. "Daddy?" Emma's voice brought him back to the present. "Are you okay?" He realized he'd been standing motionless, lost in memories while holding this strange egg. Emma was watching him with concern, her dark eyes, Sarah's eyes, full of worry that no 10-year-old should have to feel for her parent. "I'm fine, Em. Just thinking." He forced a smile that felt more natural than it had in months. "What do you think we should do with this?" Emma considered seriously, tilting her head in a gesture so reminiscent of her mother that Wes's chest tightened. "Maybe we should keep it warm, in case whatever's inside needs help hatching." The practicality of her suggestion struck him. Whatever kind of egg this was, it was clearly alive. He could feel movement inside when he held it still. Something was growing in there, something that might need their help to survive. "You're right," he said, surprising himself with the decision. "Let's take it to the house." They walked across the yard together, Emma chattering about what kind of bird might hatch from such a large egg, while Wes found himself genuinely curious. For the first time in months, the egg pulsed gently against his chest, warm and somehow comforting. Inside the farmhouse, the kitchen still held traces of the morning's coffee and the lingering scent of the lavender soap Sarah had loved. Her presence seemed strongest here, in the room where she'd spent countless hours cooking meals that turned ordinary ingredients into expressions of love. Wes placed the egg carefully in a shallow basket lined with one of Sarah's old quilts, the one she'd stitched during the long winter evenings of her pregnancy. The soft fabric seemed appropriate somehow, a connection between the past and whatever future this mysterious discovery might bring. Emma pulled a chair close to the basket, her chin resting on her folded arms as she studied the egg intently. "How long do you think it will take to hatch?" "I don't know, sweetheart. We'll just have to wait and see." Waiting. It seemed like that's all they'd been doing since Sarah died. Waiting for the pain to lessen, waiting for normalcy to return, waiting for some sign that life might be worth living again. But this felt different somehow. This felt like waiting for something good. 3 days passed with the egg resting in Sarah's quilt, its gentle warmth a constant presence in the kitchen. Wes found himself checking on it throughout the day, drawn by a curiosity he hadn't felt since before Sarah's diagnosis. Emma had taken to sitting beside it while doing her homework, occasionally whispering to whatever might be listening inside. The cracks had grown more pronounced, creating intricate patterns across the shell's surface like a roadmap to somewhere unknown. Sometimes, in the early morning light, Wes could swear he saw the faintest movement, a shifting shadow that suggested life preparing to emerge. On the 4th morning, everything changed. Wes woke before dawn, pulled from sleep by a sound he couldn't identify, a soft tapping that seemed to come from downstairs. He lay still for a moment, listening to the familiar creaks and sighs of the old house settling around him. The sound came again, rhythmic and deliberate. He padded downstairs in his bare feet, following the sound to the kitchen. The egg was moving, not just the subtle shifts he'd noticed before, but actual rocking motion that made the basket sway gently on the table. The tapping grew louder as something inside struck the shell from within, determined to break free. Wes pulled up a chair and watched, transfixed, as hairline fractures spread outward from a central point. A piece of shell no bigger than a quarter fell away, revealing a glimpse of something that made his breath catch. An eye looked back at him, not the black bead of a bird's eye, but something larger, more complex. The iris was a deep violet color that seemed to hold flecks of gold, and there was an intelligence there that made Wes's skin prickle. Whatever was inside this egg, it wasn't any ordinary creature. "Daddy?" Emma's sleepy voice came from the doorway. She stood in her pajamas, drawn by the same instinctive pull that had woken him. "Come here, Em, but move slowly," Wes whispered, not taking his eyes off the egg. "I think it's hatching." Emma crept forward, her earlier sleepiness forgotten. Together, they watched as more pieces of shell fell away, revealing glimpses of something extraordinary. The creature inside seemed to be resting, gathering strength for the final push to freedom. The shell cracked with a sound like breaking glass, splitting cleanly in half. What emerged made both father and daughter gasp in wonder. The hatchling was about the size of a house cat, covered in downy feathers that shifted color in the morning light, silver to pearl to the faintest hint of gold. Its body was elongated like a small dragon from Emma's storybooks, but its limbs were more like those of a young deer, delicate and perfectly proportioned. Small wings, translucent as butterfly wings, folded against its back. But it was the creature's face that truly amazed them. While clearly not human, there was something almost childlike in its features: large, expressive eyes, a small nose, and what might have been the beginning of a gentle smile. When it looked directly at Wes, he felt a jolt of recognition, as if he were seeing something long forgotten but deeply familiar. "What is it?" Emma breathed, reaching out instinctively before catching herself. The hatchling turned toward her voice, and those remarkable eyes fixed on her face. It made a soft sound, somewhere between a chirp and a coo, and Emma's face lit up with pure joy. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Wes found himself nodding, though his rational mind was screaming that this was impossible. Creatures like this didn't exist outside of fairy tales. He must be having some kind of breakdown, brought on by stress. And grief and too many sleepless nights worrying about bills and chickens and how to be a father when he could barely take care of himself. But then the hatchling turned back to him, tilted its head in a gesture so human-like it made his chest tight, and he knew this wasn't a hallucination. This was real, impossible as it seemed. "We need to help it," Emma said, her voice taking on the practical tone she used when she'd made up her mind about something. "It's probably hungry and scared." The creature didn't look scared exactly. If anything, it seemed curious, studying them with the same fascination they were showing it. It struggled to stand on unsteady legs, wobbled for a moment, then took a tentative step toward Emma. "Easy there," Wes murmured, extending his hand slowly. The hatchling sniffed his fingers delicately, its touch as soft as rose petals, then nuzzled against his palm with complete trust. In that moment, something shifted. Inside Wes's chest, the constant weight of grief and responsibility didn't disappear, but it seemed to lighten just enough to let him breathe freely for the first time in months. This little being, whatever it was, had chosen to trust him. "What should we call it?" Emma asked, her practical nature asserting itself again. Wes studied the creature's ethereal features, the way the morning light seemed to gather around it like it was meant to shine. "What do you think? Boy or girl?" Emma leaned closer, considering seriously. The hatchling chirped softly and nuzzled her hand, clearly enjoying the attention. "I think it's a girl," Emma decided. "She looks like a Luna to me. Like the moon, Luna." The name felt right somehow, celestial and mysterious, like the creature herself. As if responding to her new name, Luna stretched her tiny wings and made a sound that could have been approval. "Luna it is," Wes agreed, surprised by how natural it felt to accept this impossible addition to their family. But even as wonder filled him, practical concerns began to surface. What did Luna eat? Where could they keep her? And most importantly, what would happen if anyone else discovered her? A creature like this would attract attention they couldn't afford. Scientists, government, officials, reporters, people who would want to study her, cage her, turn her into a curiosity rather than the living miracle she clearly was. "Emma," he said carefully, "this has to be our secret. You understand that, right? We can't tell anyone about Luna." Emma nodded, solemnly, the weight of adult responsibility settling on her young shoulders. "Like when Mommy was sick and we didn't tell everyone how scared we were?" The comparison hit him like a physical blow. Yes, exactly like that. Another burden of silence, another secret to carry. But this time, instead of protecting others from their pain, they were protecting something precious from a world that might not understand. "Exactly like that," he confirmed, hoping he was making the right choice. Luna seemed to sense the serious turn in the conversation. She moved closer to Emma, pressing her warm body against the girl's arm in what could only be described as a comforting gesture. Emma's smile returned, brighter than before. "Don't worry, Luna," she whispered. "We'll take good care of you." Over the next few hours, they discovered that Luna was remarkably adaptable. She seemed to understand that she needed to stay hidden, remaining quiet when voices carried from outside. She ate small pieces of bread and fruit with delicate enthusiasm, and when Wes fashioned a nest from old blankets in the back corner of the kitchen pantry, she settled into it with apparent contentment. But it was her behavior toward them that truly amazed Wes. Luna seemed to sense their emotions, offering gentle touches when sadness threatened to overwhelm them, playing softly with Emma when the girl needed distraction, and simply being present when words weren't enough. By afternoon, the impossible had begun to feel almost normal. Emma sat on the kitchen floor, showing Luna her picture books, while the creature studied the illustrations with evident fascination. Wes found himself humming while he prepared lunch, something he hadn't done since Sarah's death. "Daddy," Emma said suddenly, looking up from a book about woodland animals, "do you think Mommy sent Luna to us?" The question caught him off guard, stirring emotions he'd worked hard to keep buried. In the 2 years since Sarah's death, he'd avoided discussions, about heaven or angels, or any of the comforting platitudes people had offered at the funeral. His faith had died with his wife, leaving him with nothing but questions and anger, but looking at Luna, watching the way she seemed to radiate peace and hope, Wes found himself considering possibilities he'd dismissed as wishful thinking. "I don't." "No, sweetheart," he said honestly, "but Luna came to us when we needed her most. Sometimes that's enough." Emma nodded, satisfied with his answer in the way children often are when adults acknowledge mystery instead of pretending to have all the answers. She returned to her book, and Luna curled up beside her, the two of them creating a picture of contentment that made Wes's heart ache with something that wasn't entirely sadness. As evening approached and the kitchen filled with golden light, Wes realized that for the first time in 2 years, he was looking forward to tomorrow, not because his problems had disappeared or his grief had magically healed, but because something extraordinary had entered their lives. Luna stretched and yawned, revealing tiny teeth that sparkled like pearls. She looked at Wes with those remarkable eyes, and he could have sworn she winked. Whatever she was, wherever she'd come from, she was theirs now. And somehow that changed everything. Emma's sketch journal had always been her refuge, but in the days following Luna's hatching, it became something more, a careful documentation of the impossible. She filled page after page with detailed drawings of their extraordinary houseguest, capturing Luna's growth and changes with the precision of a young naturalist. "Look, Daddy," Emma said one morning, showing him her latest sketch. Her wings got bigger overnight. Wes studied the drawing, comparing it to the sleeping Luna curled in her makeshift nest. Emma was right. The delicate, translucent wings had definitely grown, now spanning nearly a foot when Luna stretched them in her sleep. "You're very observant," he told Emma, meaning it. Her sketches had become an invaluable record of Luna's rapid development, showing changes that happened almost too quickly to notice day by day. Luna had been with them for a week now, and each day brought new discoveries. She was remarkably intelligent, seeming to understand not just their words, but their emotions. When Emma struggled with her math homework, Luna would settle beside her, radiating a calm presence that helped the girl focus. When Wes felt overwhelmed by the stack of unpaid bills, Luna appeared at his elbow, her gentle chirping somehow soothing his anxiety. "She knows when we're sad," Emma observed, adding shading to Luna's expressive eyes in her drawing. "Yesterday, when you were looking at Mommy's pictures, Luna came right over to you," Wes remembered. He'd been sorting through Sarah's belongings. Again, a task he attempted every few months, but never completed. This time, with Luna's warm presence pressed against his leg, he'd managed to pack away an entire box of Sarah's books without breaking down. The practical challenges of caring for Luna had proven less difficult than expected. She ate sparingly, small pieces of fruit, bits of bread, and occasionally flowers from Sarah's now wild garden. Her favorite seemed to be the late-blooming roses that still climbed the trellis by the kitchen window. More surprisingly, the farm itself seemed to be responding to Luna's presence. The sick chickens had recovered completely, their feathers glossy and eyes bright. The vegetable garden, neglected since Sarah's death, had begun producing again, late tomatoes bursting with unexpected sweetness, herbs growing with unusual vigor. "It's like she's magic," Emma said, not looking up from her sketch. Wes couldn't argue with that assessment. There was something undeniably magical about Luna, though he preferred to think of it as a natural phenomenon he simply didn't understand yet. The alternative, accepting that genuine magic had entered their lives, felt too fragile to trust. The first real test of their secret-keeping came on a Thursday morning when Mrs. Patterson knocked on their front door. Eleanor Patterson had been Sarah's closest friend and had appointed herself unofficial guardian of the Holloway family's well-being since the funeral. A retired teacher with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, she had a gift for appearing whenever Wes was at his lowest point. "Morning, Wesley," she said, holding up a covered casserole dish. Brought you some of that chicken and dumplings Emma likes. Luna was in the kitchen, and Wes felt his heart rate spike. But Emma, with remarkable presence of mind for a 10-year-old, had already scooped Luna into the pantry and closed the door. "That's very kind of you, Mrs. Patterson," Wes said, accepting the dish and trying to appear normal. "Would you like some coffee?" "Don't mind if I do." She settled at the kitchen table, the same spot where Luna often perched to watch Emma do homework. "You know, Wesley, I've been meaning to tell you, Emma seems different lately." Wes's grip tightened on his coffee mug. "Different how?" "Happier," Mrs. Patterson said, smiling at Emma, who had joined them at the table. "More like her old self. Whatever you're doing, it's working." Emma beamed, and Wes felt a surge of pride. It was true. Emma had been sleeping better, laughing more, engaging with the world in ways she hadn't since Sarah's death. Her teacher had even commented on her improved focus and participation in class. "She's growing up," Wes said carefully. "Kids are resilient." "Indeed they are." Mrs. Patterson sipped her coffee thoughtfully. "And you look better too, if you don't mind me saying. More rested. The farm seems to be doing well. I noticed your chickens are looking healthy again." From the pantry came the faintest sound, a soft chirp that could have been anything. Emma coughed loudly, covering the noise, and Mrs. Patterson didn't seem to notice. After she left, they released Luna from her hiding place. She emerged with a piece of Sarah's old apron clutched in her tiny claws, having apparently spent her confinement exploring the forgotten corners of the pantry. "Good girl," Emma praised, stroking Luna's feathers. "You were so quiet." Luna preened under the attention, then surprised them both by carefully arranging the piece of apron fabric in her nest. It was such a human gesture, taking comfort from something that smelled familiar, that Wes felt his throat tighten. That evening, as they sat around the kitchen table for dinner, Luna perched on the back of Emma's chair like an exotic pet. The scene felt both surreal and completely natural, as if this had always been their family dynamic. "Emma," Wes said, cutting his chicken into small pieces, "what do you think Luna is exactly?" Emma considered the question seriously, offering Luna a piece of bread while she thought. "I don't think she's from here," she said finally. "I mean, not from Earth." The matter-of-fact way she said it made Wes smile. "An alien? Maybe. Or maybe she's from somewhere else, like a different dimension or something." Emma's young imagination embraced possibilities that Wes's adult mind struggled to accept. "In my books, there are lots of places that exist alongside ours, but we can't usually see them," Luna chirped, as if agreeing with this assessment, then performed one of her endearing tricks, a little dance that involved hopping from foot to foot while flapping her wings. It never failed to make Emma giggle. "Whatever she is," Wes said, watching his daughter's joy, "I'm glad she found us." That night, after Emma had gone to bed and Luna had settled into her nest, Wes sat alone in the kitchen going through the monthly bills. The familiar anxiety began building as he calculated what they owed against what little money remained in their account. Luna appeared beside his chair, seeming to sense his distress. She placed one tiny claw on his hand and looked up at him with those remarkable eyes. In that moment, the weight of his worries seemed to shift slightly, becoming manageable rather than overwhelming. For the first time since Sarah's death, Wes felt like he might actually be able to handle whatever came next, not because their problems had disappeared, but because he no longer faced them alone. Emma was growing stronger every day, and now they had Luna, mysterious, magical Luna, who had somehow restored hope to their broken family. He reached out to stroke Luna's soft feathers, marveling at how something so small could have such a profound impact on their lives. "Thank you," he whispered, not entirely sure who or what he was thanking. Luna chirped softly in response, then curled up on the table beside his paperwork, her presence a gentle reminder that some problems were worth solving because the people and creatures you loved depended on you. Outside, the October wind rattled the windows, but inside the kitchen, warmth and peace reigned. For the first time in 2 years, Wes fell asleep in his chair with a smile on his face. Luna's soft breathing a lullaby that promised better days ahead. The old farm bell hadn't rung in over 2 years, not since the morning Sarah collapsed in the garden and everything changed. It hung silent on its wooden post near the kitchen door, its bronze surface tarnished with age and neglect. Wes had considered taking it down a dozen times, but something always stopped him. Perhaps the memory of how Sarah used to ring it too. Call him and Emma in for supper, or the way its clear tone had once marked the rhythm of their family life. Then Luna discovered it. Wes was repairing a section of fence when he heard the sound, a single clear chime that made him drop his hammer. In surprise, he looked toward the house and saw Luna perched on the bell's support beam, her small form silhouetted against the morning sky. "How did you get up there?" he called, hurrying toward her. Luna chirped in response, then did something extraordinary. She pressed her wing against the bell's surface, and it rang again. Not the random clang of metal striking metal, but a pure, resonant tone that seemed to carry meaning. Emma burst through the kitchen door, her face bright with wonder. "Daddy, did you hear that? Luna made the bell ring." "I heard it," Wes said, though he wasn't sure he believed what he'd witnessed. Luna couldn't possibly be strong enough to move the heavy bronze bell, yet the evidence was undeniable. Over the following days, Luna's connection to the bell became a source of endless fascination for Emma and growing amazement for Wes. The little creature seemed to understand that the bell was important, treating it with a reverence that suggested deeper comprehension than any animal should possess. She would perch beside it for hours, occasionally touching it with her wing to produce single, clear notes. Sometimes the chimes seemed random, but other times they carried an almost musical quality that made Wes think of church bells or wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "She's trying to talk to us," Emma declared one afternoon, settling beside Luna with her sketch pad. "Look, Daddy, when she's happy, the bell rings 3 times. When she's sleepy, it's just one long ring." Emma was right. Luna had developed a simple but consistent code, using the bell to communicate her basic needs and emotions. 3 quick chimes meant joy or excitement. 1 long note signaled contentment. 2 short rings seemed to be her way of calling for attention, but it was the memory the bell's renewed voice awakened that affected Wes most profoundly. He found himself remembering the evening ritual that had once anchored their family life. Sarah stepping onto the porch as the sun set behind the hills, grasping the thick rope, and sending that clear call across the farm. "Dinner's ready. Come. Home. You're loved and wanted here." "Mommy used to ring that bell," Emma said softly one evening, as if reading his thoughts. She was teaching Luna a simple game with colored blocks, and the creature was learning with remarkable speed. "Every night," Wes confirmed, his voice thick with memory. "She said it was her way of gathering her family." Luna looked up at the word family, tilting her head in that endearing way that made her seem almost human. Then she hopped over to Emma and nuzzled her hand, a gesture of comfort that seemed to acknowledge the weight of their shared loss. "Do you think Luna understands about Mommy?" Emma asked. Wes watched as Luna settled in Emma's lap, her presence immediately soothing the girl's sadness. "I think Luna understands a lot more than we realize." That night, as they prepared dinner together, a routine that had become surprisingly natural, Luna surprised them again. She flew to the bell and rang it 3 times, then looked at them expectantly. "Dinner's ready," Emma laughed, understanding immediately. "She's calling us to eat just like Mommy used to do." The simple gesture hit Wes with unexpected force, not because it was painful, but because it wasn't. For the first time since Sarah's death, the memory brought more joy than sorrow. Luna hadn't replaced Sarah, nothing could, but she had somehow restored the warmth and connection that had once defined their family meals. They began incorporating the bell into their routine. Luna would ring it when she wanted to play, when it was time for Emma to do homework, or when she sensed that one of them needed comfort. The sound became a soundtrack to their healing, marking moments of joy and togetherness in lives that had been silent too long. Emma's games with Luna grew more elaborate as the creature's intelligence became apparent. She taught Luna to sort objects by color, to respond to simple commands, and even to draw by moving colored stones into patterns on the kitchen floor. Luna learned everything quickly, but more than that, she seemed to enjoy the learning process itself. "She's smarter than most dogs," Emma observed, watching Luna carefully arrange red stones in a perfect circle. "Maybe smarter than some people." Wes couldn't argue. Luna demonstrated problem-solving skills that amazed him daily. When Emma accidentally dropped her favorite pencil behind the heavy bookshelf, Luna squeezed into the narrow space and pushed it out with her beak. When the latch on the chicken coop came loose, Luna somehow managed to close it, keeping the remaining birds safe from predators. But it was Luna's emotional intelligence that truly set her apart. She seemed to sense not just their surface emotions, but their deeper needs. When Wes spent too long staring at bills he couldn't pay, Luna would find ways to distract him, knocking over pencils, performing her little dancing routine, or simply pressing her warm body against his arm until he looked away from his worries. The effect on Emma was even more pronounced. The quiet, withdrawn child who had emerged from her mother's funeral was blossoming into someone Wes barely recognized. Confident, curious, and genuinely happy. Her teacher had called twice to comment on her improved participation in class and her renewed friendships with other children. "It's like having a little sister," Emma told him one evening as they watched Luna explore a cardboard box with scientific thoroughness. "Someone who always wants to play and never gets bored with my games." Wes nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. Luna's presence had restored something essential to their home, the sense that it was a place of joy and discovery rather than just shelter from the world's hardships. As October faded toward November, Luna continued to grow and change. Her wings were now large enough for short flights around the kitchen, and her coloring had deepened from pearl white to a subtle iridescence that caught the light like oil on water. But most remarkably, she had begun to sing, not chirping or cooing, but actual melodic sounds that Emma swore were attempts at human words. Dada and Emma were clear enough to make them both stop and stare in wonder. "She's trying to say our names," Emma whispered, delighted. "Impossible," Wes murmured, but even as he said it, Luna looked directly at him and produced a sound that was unmistakably Wes. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep with Luna curled beside her pillow, Wes sat in the kitchen thinking about the changes that had transformed their lives. The bell hung silent outside, but he could still hear its voice in his memory. Not just Luna's communications, but the echo of all the family dinners it had announced over the years. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new bills, new problems to solve. But tonight, for the first time since Sarah's death, their house felt like a home again. Sarah's recipe box sat on the kitchen counter where it had gathered dust for 2 years, its wooden surface worn smooth by decades of use. The small brass hinges had tarnished, and the painted flowers on the lid had faded. But inside lay treasures that Wes had been unable to face since his wife's death. Dozens of handwritten cards detailing the meals that had once filled their home with warmth and laughter. It was Luna who led him back to it. The little creature had developed a fascination with the box, often perching beside it and running her delicate claws along its edges as if she could sense the love contained within. One morning, while Wes was drinking his coffee and Emma was getting ready for school, Luna managed to nudge the lid open. Recipe cards scattered across the counter, Sarah's neat handwriting a painful reminder of everything they'd lost. Wes's first instinct was to sweep them back into the box and close the lid, but Emma appeared at his elbow before he could move. "Mommy's chicken and biscuits," she said softly, picking up a card stained with years of use. "Remember how she made these?" Every Sunday, Wes did remember. Sarah, standing at the stove in her favorite apron, humming while she rolled out biscuit dough, the kitchen filled with the scent of herbs and comfort. Emma had always helped, standing on a step stool to reach the counter, her small hands eager to learn. She said cooking was how she showed love, Emma continued, studying the card with the reverence usually reserved for sacred texts. Luna chirped softly and nudged another card toward them, Sarah's famous apple pie, the recipe that had won the UC County Fair 3 years running. Then another, her beef stew that could warm you from the inside out on the coldest winter day. Maybe, Emma said carefully, we could try making something for dinner tonight. The suggestion terrified and tempted. Where's an equal measure? The kitchen had been Sarah's domain, the place where her absence felt most acute, but looking at Emma's hopeful face and Luna's encouraging presence, he found himself nodding. Which one should we start with? They settled on Sarah's cornbread. Simple. Enough for beginners, but special enough to feel significant. Emma read the ingredients aloud while Wes gathered supplies, both of them moving with the careful reverence of people handling relics. Luna positioned herself on the windowsill where she could observe everything, occasionally chirping what sounded like encouragement. Her presence somehow made the task feel less like trespassing on sacred ground and more like carrying on a beloved tradition. It says to mix the dry ingredients first, Emma read, frowning at her mother's faded handwriting. Then add the buttermilk slowly. Wes measured flour while Emma cracked eggs with scientific precision, both of them discovering muscles they hadn't used in years. Cooking, it turned out, was more complex than Sarah had made it look, requiring coordination and timing that came naturally to some people and had to be learned by others. The first batch burned, the second was too dry, but the third emerged from the oven, golden and perfect, filling the kitchen with an aroma that transported them both back to happier times. It smells just like Mommy's, Emma breathed, her eyes bright with accomplishment. They ate the cornbread with butter and honey, Luna accepting tiny crumbs with dignified gratitude. The taste wasn't quite right. Sarah had possessed some indefinable touch that made everything she cooked special, but it was good enough to make them both smile. Tomorrow we should try the chicken and dumplings, Emma suggested, already planning their next culinary adventure. Over the following weeks, cooking became their evening ritual. Emma would choose a recipe, Wes would gather ingredients, and Luna would supervise from her perch, offering moral support through their inevitable failures and celebrating their successes with elaborate wing-flapping displays. They burned biscuits and oversalted soup. They created pasta disasters and vegetable catastrophes. But slowly, gradually, they began to succeed more often than they failed. The kitchen filled with life again, steam rising from pots, flour dusting the counters, the satisfying sounds of chopping and stirring and sizzling. More importantly, they began to talk, really talk, in ways they hadn't since Sarah's death. I was scared you'd forgotten how to be happy, Emma admitted one evening as they waited for a casserole to finish. Baking. She was teaching Luna to stack wooden blocks, and the creature was approaching the task with her usual intense concentration. I was scared of the same thing, Wes confessed. About both of us. Luna looked up from her blocks and made a soft sound that conveyed sympathy beyond her years. Or perhaps her species. She had grown considerably in the weeks since hatching, now nearly the size of a small chicken, but far more graceful. Her wings had developed enough for sustained flight, and she often circled the kitchen like a tiny, iridescent angel. It was during one of these evening cooking sessions that they received an unexpected visitor. Dr. Rebecca Martinez stood on their front porch, briefcase in hand, and concern written across her pleasant features. Emma's school counselor was a woman in her early 40s with kind brown eyes and graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She'd called ahead, asking to check on Emma's home environment as part of a routine follow-up for students who had experienced significant family trauma. Mr. Holloway, she said, accepting his invitation to come inside. I hope you don't mind. The unannounced visit. I was in the area and thought I'd stop by to see how Emma's doing at home." Wes's heart hammered as he led her toward the kitchen, acutely aware of Luna hidden in the pantry with a supply of toys to keep her quiet. The recipe box sat open on the counter, cards scattered around it like evidence of their newfound domestic stability. "It smells wonderful in here," Dr. Martinez observed, noting the dinner preparations with obvious approval. "Emma told me you've been cooking together." "We're learning," Wes said, attempting to appear calm while straining his ears for any sounds from the pantry. "It's been good for both of us." Emma appeared from the living room, her face bright with the confidence that had bloomed over the past few weeks. "Dr. Martinez, want to see what we made yesterday?" "Daddy took pictures." She launched into an enthusiastic description of their recent culinary adventures, showing no signs of the withdrawn behavior that had concerned her teachers earlier in the year. Dr. Martinez listened with growing amazement, taking notes and asking encouraging questions. "The improvement in Emma's demeanor has been remarkable," she told Wes quietly, while Emma washed her hands. "Her teachers say she's more engaged, more social. Whatever you're doing, it's working beautifully." From the pantry came the faintest sound, a single soft chirp that could have been anything. Dr. Martinez didn't seem to notice, but Wes felt sweat break out on his forehead. "We've been spending more time together," he said, which was absolutely true. "Cooking, talking, working on the farm. And Emma seems to have developed quite an interest in art," Dr. Martinez added, flipping through Emma's sketch journal, which lay open on the counter. "These drawings are remarkably detailed for a child her age." Wes glanced at the journal and felt his stomach drop. The open pages showed Luna in various poses, sleeping, playing, performing her little dance. But to his relief, Dr. Martinez seemed to interpret them as imaginative fantasy art rather than realistic documentation. "She's always been creative," Wes managed, hoping his voice sounded normal. After Dr. Martinez left, expressing her pleasure at Emma's progress and the obvious stability of their home environment, they released Luna from her hiding place. She emerged with a piece of Sarah's old apron fabric, the same piece she'd claimed during her first day with them, and settled contentedly in Emma's lap. "Good girl," Emma praised, stroking Luna's iridescent feathers. "You were so quiet." That evening, as they shared another successful meal from Sarah's recipe collection, Wes reflected on how much their lives had changed. The desperate man who had discovered a mysterious egg in his chicken coop was barely recognizable in the person he'd become. Someone who could laugh at cooking disasters, who looked forward to each day, who had learned to hope again. Luna seemed to sense his contentment. She flew to the windowsill and touched the old farm bell with her wing, producing a clear, joyful chime that seemed to announce their transformation to the world. They were healing, all of them. And for the first time since Sarah's death, Wes believed that better days lay ahead. The family photo album had lived on the bottom shelf of the living room bookcase for 2 years, spine facing inward so no one would have to see the happy faces it contained. Sarah had been meticulous about documenting their lives together. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings, summer picnics, everyday moments that had seemed ordinary at the time, but now felt precious beyond measure. Emma discovered it on a rainy Thursday afternoon, when Luna's curiosity led her to explore the forgotten corners of the house. The little creature had grown bold in her explorations, confident in her ability to hide if strangers appeared. She was investigating the bookcase when her wing knocked the album from its hiding place, sending it sliding across the hardwood floor. "What's this?" Emma asked, though Wes could see in her face that she knew exactly what it was. They hadn't looked at the album together since the funeral. Wes had tried once, about 6 months after Sarah's death, but the pain had been too raw, the contrast between then and now too stark to bear. Now, with Luna perched between them on the couch and rain pattering against the windows, it felt like something they might be able to handle together. The first pages showed their wedding day, Sarah radiant in her grandmother's dress, Wes young and nervous in his rented tuxedo, both of them impossibly happy and blissfully unaware of what the future held. Emma studied the photos with the fascination of someone seeing history come alive. "You looked so different, Daddy," she said, tracing her finger along his younger face. "You were smiling so big." Wes remembered that smile, the overwhelming joy of marrying his best friend, the sense that anything was possible as long as they faced it together. Looking at the photo now didn't bring the crushing sadness he'd expected. Instead, he felt a bittersweet gratitude for having experienced that level of happiness, even if it had been temporary. Luna seemed to understand the significance of what they were sharing. She settled quietly between them, her warm presence a comforting bridge between past and present. They turned pages slowly, watching their story unfold in carefully preserved moments. Sarah painting the nursery, the first ultrasound photo, barely recognizable but treasured beyond measure. Sarah holding newborn Emma, both of them exhausted and perfect. "I was so tiny," Emma marveled at a photo of herself at 6 months old, sitting in a high chair with food smeared across her face, while Sarah laughed in the background. "You were perfect," Wes said, the words coming easier than expected. "Your mom used to say you were her greatest masterpiece." They lingered over Emma's early years, first steps, first words, first day of school. Sarah was in every photo, sometimes in the foreground but more often in the background, the loving presence who made everything else possible. Her absence from their current lives felt enormous, but her presence in these captured moments felt equally real. "She was always taking pictures," Emma observed, "even when we were just doing regular stuff." She said regular stuff was the most important thing to remember, Wes replied, recalling Sarah's philosophy about photography. "The big moments take care of themselves, but it's the everyday love that makes a life." Luna chirped softly and stretched one wing toward a photo of Sarah reading to a young Emma in the same chair where they now sat. The gesture seemed deliberate, as if she understood that this woman had once occupied the space where healing now took place. When they reached the last occupied pages, Emma's 8th birthday party, just 3 months before Sarah's diagnosis, Wes braced himself for the familiar wave of grief. But instead, he found himself smiling at his wife's expression as she watched Emma blow out her candles. Pure love and joy, captured forever in a moment of ordinary magic. "She looked so happy," Emma said softly. "She was happy," Wes confirmed. "We all were. That's what I want you to remember most. Not how she died, but how she lived, how much she loved us." Emma nodded, leaning against his shoulder while Luna settled more comfortably in her lap. They sat in contemplative silence, listening to the rain and processing what they'd shared. "Daddy," Emma said eventually, "do you think it's okay to be happy again, without Mommy?" The question pierced his heart with its innocence and wisdom. It was the same question he'd been wrestling with for months, the guilt that accompanied every moment of joy or contentment. "I think," he said carefully, "that your mom would be upset if we weren't happy. She always said her job was to love us so well that we'd be strong enough to handle anything, even handling life without her. Especially that." He hugged Emma, closer, marveling at her insight. "I think she'd be proud of how we're taking care of each other, and how we're taking care of Luna." As if summoned by the mention of her name, Luna performed one of her endearing little dances, hopping from foot to foot while flapping her wings. The display never failed to make Emma giggle, and tonight was no exception. "Luna makes everything better," Emma declared. "Do you think she'll stay with us forever?" The question Wes had been dreading finally voiced aloud. Luna had grown significantly since hatching, and there were subtle changes in her behavior that suggested she was maturing, beyond the helpless creature they'd first discovered. Sometimes he caught her staring out the windows with an expression that seemed almost longing. "I don't know, sweetheart," he answered honestly, "but I hope so." That weekend, Dr. Martinez returned for another visit, this time bringing art supplies. As a gift for Emma. Wes had been expecting her. They'd talked on the phone about Emma's continued progress and his own adjustment to single parenthood. "You look well, Mr. Holloway," she said, accepting his offer of coffee. "Rested? Emma mentioned you've been cooking together." "It's become our evening routine," he confirmed, gesturing toward the recipe box that now held a place of honor on the counter. "We're working our way through my wife's collection." Rebecca nodded approvingly. Maintaining family traditions while creating new ones. It's exactly what grief counselors recommend, though most people struggle to find that balance. Luna was safely hidden in the pantry again, but her influence on their lives was evident everywhere. In the flowers that now brightened the kitchen windowsill, in Emma's confident demeanor, in Wes's improved appearance and attitude. "Emma seems to have found her artistic voice," Rebecca observed, flipping through the sketch journal. "These nature studies are remarkably sophisticated. Has she always been interested in wildlife? She's developed quite an eye for detail recently," Wes said, technically truthful while avoiding specifics. "I'd like to encourage that interest," Rebecca said. "Art therapy can be incredibly healing for children who've experienced loss. Would you mind if I brought some additional supplies next time? Maybe some colored pencils and watercolors?" Emma, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped forward with enthusiasm. "I'd love that! I want to draw everything, birds and flowers, and maybe even make a book someday." After Rebecca left, they celebrated the success of another hidden Luna visit with an impromptu dance party in the kitchen. Luna seemed to understand that these moments of pure joy were precious, participating with her own version of dancing that involved aerial loops and graceful spirals around the room. "She's like our guardian angel," Emma said, watching Luna perform an especially elaborate flight pattern. "Except better because we can actually see her." That night, as they prepared for bed, Wes found himself looking forward to tomorrow for reasons that had nothing to do with obligation or necessity. He was curious about what Luna would discover, what recipe they would attempt, what new sketch Emma would add to her growing collection. The crushing weight of grief hadn't disappeared entirely, but it no longer defined every moment of his existence. In its place was something he'd thought he'd lost forever, the simple pleasure of being alive, of being part of a family, of having hope for the future. Luna settled into her nest with a contented sigh, her presence a daily reminder that miracles could be small and quiet and still change everything. Outside, the rain had stopped, and moonlight streamed through the kitchen windows, illuminating their transformed home with silver light. The ancient farm deed was yellowed with age and brittle at the edges when Wes found it tucked behind a loose board in the attic. He'd climbed up there to repair a leak that had been dripping into Emma's bedroom, armed with tools and determination to tackle yet another maintenance problem that couldn't wait for professional help. What he discovered changed everything he thought he knew about. Luna's arrival. The deed itself was unremarkable, formal language documenting the transfer of 47 acres from the county to his great-grandfather, Ezra Holloway, in 1923. But wrapped inside the deed was something extraordinary, a leather journal, its pages filled with his grandfather's careful handwriting and detailed sketches that made Wes's blood run cold. The sketches showed Luna, or a creature so similar that the difference was negligible. "Emma," he called down through the attic opening, "can you come up here and bring your sketch journal?" Emma climbed the narrow ladder with Luna perched on her shoulder, both of them moving with the easy confidence of those who'd grown comfortable in each other's company. Luna had taken to riding on Emma's shoulder whenever possible, like an exotic parrot who happened to have 4 legs and an otherworldly intelligence. "What did you find?" Emma asked, settling cross-legged on the dusty attic floor. Wes handed her the journal, watching her face change as she took in the implications of what she was seeing. Page after page of meticulous documentation, sketches, measurements, behavioral observations, all describing a creature virtually identical to the one now grooming her feathers on Emma's shoulder. "But this is Luna," Emma said, confusion evident in her voice. "These pictures are Luna." Look at the dates, Wes said quietly. Emma flipped to the front page, where her great-grandfather had written in faded ink, October 1929, the second visitation. Her mouth opened in a small O of surprise. The second, she whispered. They read together, Luna seeming to understand the gravity of the moment and remaining unusually still. The journal told an incredible story, one that reframed everything they thought they knew about their mysterious houseguest. According to Ezra Holloway's meticulous records, Luna's kind had appeared on the farm twice before. The first visitation had come in 1893, during a devastating drought that threatened to destroy the family's livelihood. The creature, Ezra called her the Guardian, had remained for 3 months, and during that time the farm had flourished despite the continued dry conditions. The second visitation had occurred in 1929, during the depths of the Great Depression. Ezra had been on the verge of losing the farm to creditors when another guardian had appeared, this one hatching from an egg he'd found in the same chicken coop where Wes had discovered Luna. Again, the farm had mysteriously prospered during the creature's stay. They come when the family needs them most, Emma said, reading over a particularly detailed entry. Great-great-grandfather wrote that they always know exactly when to arrive. The journal included precise observations about the creature's behavior, their apparent intelligence, and their profound impact on both the land and the people who cared for them. But most remarkably, it documented their departures. They leave when the healing is complete, Wes read aloud from one of Ezra's final entries. The guardian stayed until I could stand on my own again, until the farm was secure and my faith restored. On her last morning, she sang a song I'll carry in my heart forever, then simply faded away like morning mist. I know she'll return someday, when another generation needs her guidance. Emma looked at Luna with new understanding. You're not really. As are you? You're just visiting until we're okay again. Luna chirped softly and nuzzled Emma's cheek, a gesture that managed to be both comforting and heartbreaking. She seemed to understand that her secret had been discovered, that the temporary nature of her presence was now acknowledged. But why? Emma asked, her voice small. Why do they come to our family? The answer was in the deed itself. Buried in the formal legal language was a clause that Wes had initially dismissed as 19th century superstition. This land is held in trust not only for the Holloway line, but for the guardians who have watched over it since time immemorial. The family agrees to provide sanctuary when called upon, and in return will receive protection in times of greatest need. It's like a contract, Wes said, marveling at the implications. Our family has been bound to Luna's kind for over a century. They spent the afternoon reading through the entire journal, discovering details that made Luna's behavior make perfect sense. The creatures were drawn to families experiencing profound loss or crisis. They possessed an innate ability to sense emotional wounds and facilitate healing through their presence. They grew rapidly and left when their work was complete, usually after 3 to 6 months. How long has Luna been with us? Emma asked, though they both knew the answer. Almost 3 months, Wes said quietly. The knowledge hung between them like a weight. Luna's increasing size, her occasional distant gazes out the windows, her growing independence, all of it pointed toward an inevitable departure that they'd been too happy to acknowledge. That evening, they sat in the kitchen with Luna perched between them, the journal open on the table. The creature seemed different somehow, as if the revelation of her true nature had given her permission to be less secretive about her extraordinary abilities. Grandpa wrote that they try to prepare their families for the separation, Emma read. From one of the later entries, the guardian began singing more frequently in her final weeks, as if teaching me songs I could remember after she was gone. As if summoned by the words, Luna began to sing, not the simple chirps and calls they'd grown accustomed to, but something far more complex, a melody that seemed to weave itself into their hearts with threads of silver and gold. The song spoke of journeys and homecomings, of love that transcended physical presence, of the eternal cycle of help given and received. Wes felt tears on his cheeks and didn't bother to wipe them away. The beauty of Luna's song was almost unbearable, made more poignant by the knowledge that they would soon have to say goodbye. "How long do we have?" Emma asked when the song faded. Luna looked at them both with those remarkable violet eyes, then walked to the window where she could see the farm spread out below. She pressed her wing against the glass and sang 3 clear, pure notes. The same signal she'd always used to express contentment. "I think she's saying that depends on us," Wes interpreted. "On when we're ready to let her go." Emma nodded, wise beyond her years. "We're getting better, aren't we, Daddy? We're not the same people we were when she first came." Wes looked around the kitchen, at the recipe box open on the counter, at Emma's sketch journal documenting their journey, at the evidence of life being lived rather than merely survived. She was right. They were fundamentally different people than they'd been 3 months ago. "We're healing," he agreed. "All of us." Luna sang again, a shorter melody that sounded like agreement and approval. Then she hopped to Emma's shoulder and settled there with a sigh of contentment, as if to say that while their time was limited, it wasn't over yet. Outside, the November wind rattled the windows, but inside their kitchen, warmth and understanding reigned. They had been chosen for something extraordinary, and soon they would have to prove they were strong enough to let it go. But not tonight. Tonight, they were still a family of 3, bound together by love and the knowledge that miracles, however temporary, could change everything. Emma's farewell letter began simply, "Dear Luna." She sat at the kitchen table with her favorite pencil. Luna perched nearby as if supervising the difficult task. The words came slowly at first, then faster as her young heart found ways to express feelings too large for ordinary language. "I know you have to leave soon," she wrote in her careful cursive. "Great-great-grandfather's journal says the guardians always know when it's time to go home. I want you to know that we understand. You came when we needed you most, and you helped us remember how to be a family again." Wes watched from across the kitchen, ostensibly washing dishes but really marveling at his daughter's emotional maturity. The discovery of the journal had changed everything, not just their understanding of Luna's nature, but their approach to the inevitable goodbye. Instead of denial or desperate clinging, they had chosen acceptance and gratitude. It had been Emma's idea to write the letter. "Luna should know how we feel," she'd said with the logic that seemed to guide so many of her decisions lately. "And maybe it will help us figure out our feelings too." The farm around them bore testimony to the transformation Luna's presence had wrought. The chickens were healthier than they'd been in years, their eggs larger and more flavorful. The vegetable garden, dormant since Sarah's death, had burst into unexpected late-season productivity. Even the old oak trees seemed more vibrant, their remaining leaves holding color longer than natural, but more importantly, the people had healed. Dr. Martinez had made her final official visit the week before, expressing amazement at Emma's progress and the stability of their home environment. "Whatever you're doing," she'd told Wes privately, "it's working beautifully. Emma is one of the most emotionally healthy children I've worked with." She'd also mentioned, with a mixture of professional interest and personal warmth, that she enjoyed their conversations. "You have such an interesting perspective on parenting and loss," she'd said. "I hope we can continue talking even after." Emma no longer needs counseling. Wes had found himself looking forward to those conversations as well. Rebecca, she'd asked him to use her first name during their last visit, brought a combination of intelligence, compassion, and gentle humor that reminded him of what adult companionship could feel like. Not a replacement for what he'd lost, but something new and potentially wonderful. "I'm writing about all the things Luna taught us," Emma continued, her pencil moving steadily across the paper. "How she showed us it was okay to be happy again. How she helped us cook Mommy's recipes without being too sad. How she made us remember that home is about love, not just about the people who used to be there." Luna chirped softly, as if approving of the message. She had grown considerably in the weeks since the journal's discovery, now nearly the size of a small goose, but far more graceful. Her wings were fully developed, capable of sustained flight around the property. Sometimes Wes caught her soaring above the fields, practicing maneuvers that suggested she was preparing for a much longer journey. The community had begun to take notice of the positive changes in the Holloway family. Mrs. Patterson had commented on Emma's renewed confidence and Wes's improved demeanor. The mailman had mentioned how much better the farm looked. Even the banker had been surprised by their improved financial situation. The farm's unexpected productivity had allowed them to catch up on overdue payments and even set aside a small emergency fund. "People are noticing," Emma said one evening, looking up from her letter. "Mrs. Johnson asked me what made me so happy lately." "What did you tell her?" Wes asked, genuinely curious about how his daughter handled the constant need for secrecy. "That Daddy and I learned how to take care of each other better," Emma replied, which was both completely true and safely vague. The approaching farewell had given their days a bittersweet intensity. Every moment with Luna felt precious, every shared meal and evening conversation charged with the knowledge that their time was limited. Yet instead of making them desperate or sad, the awareness seemed to heighten their appreciation for what they still had. They had started new traditions in anticipation of Luna's absence, family dinners by candlelight, where they shared stories and dreams. Evening walks around the property, during which Luna would fly circles around them like a protective spirit. Bedtime songs, not lullabies, but the complex melodies Luna had taught them, which seemed to carry comfort beyond ordinary music. "She's preparing us," Wes realized one evening as they listened to Luna's evening song, "teaching us how to remember her without being crushed by missing her." Emma nodded, wise in the way that children who have known real loss can be. "Like how Mommy used to tell us stories about when she was little, so we'd still know her even after she was gone." The parallel was exact and heartbreaking and somehow comforting all at once. Sarah had indeed spent her final months sharing memories and wisdom, creating a legacy that transcended physical presence. Luna was doing something similar, not just healing their immediate wounds, but giving them tools to maintain that healing after she left. Rebecca's visits had become a bright spot in their routine, though she remained unaware of the true source of their transformation. Her professional interest in their family's recovery had evolved into something warmer and more personal, and Wes found himself looking forward to her perspective on the challenges and joys of single parenthood. "You've created something remarkable here," she told him during her most recent visit, standing on the porch and looking out over the thriving farm. "Emma is thriving. You seem to have found your footing as a single father, and there's a sense of peace here that's almost tangible. If only she knew the truth," Wes thought. But then again, perhaps the truth wasn't entirely about Luna. Perhaps it was about what they'd chosen to do with the gift they'd been given, how they'd allowed themselves to heal, to hope, to become whole again. The community's annual harvest celebration was approaching, and for the first time since Sarah's death, Wes was considering attending. Emma had mentioned it several times, clearly wanting to participate, but unwilling to push if he wasn't ready. "We could bring one of Mommy's casseroles," she suggested carefully, "the green bean one that everyone always loved." The idea of facing that many people, of fielding questions and condolences and well-meaning advice, still made Wes nervous. But he was no longer the broken man who had hidden from the world for 2 years. Luna's presence had given him back his confidence, his ability to engage with life rather than simply endure it. "I think that sounds like a good idea," he said, surprising both of them. "Your mother would have liked that." Emma's face lit up with joy. "Really? We can go?" "We can go," Wes confirmed, realizing as he said it that he actually meant it. The prospect of being social, of reconnecting with their community, no longer felt overwhelming. That night, as he tucked Emma into bed with Luna curled up beside her pillow, Emma shared another section of her letter. I wrote about how Luna helped us understand that love doesn't end when someone goes away," she said sleepily. "That Mommy's love is still here, even though she's gone, and Luna's love will still be here, even after she leaves." Wes kissed his daughter's forehead, marveling at the wisdom contained in her young heart. "That's exactly right, sweetheart," Luna chirped softly, a good night sound they'd all grown to love, and settled deeper into her makeshift nest. Outside, November wind rattled the windows, but inside their bedroom, warmth and security reigned. They were ready, Wes realized. Not eager for Luna to leave, but ready to let her go when the time came. Ready to take the healing she'd facilitated and build a future worthy of the love they'd received. From Sarah, from Luna, and from each other. The farewell, when it came, would be difficult, but not devastating. They had learned the difference between ending and transformation, between goodbye and letting go with love. And in learning that difference, they had discovered something even more valuable, the courage to keep living fully, no matter what losses the future might hold. The morning light streaming through the kitchen window had a different quality on the day Luna chose to leave. Softer somehow, touched with gold and possibility, in a way that made even ordinary objects seem blessed. Wes woke before dawn, drawn by an instinct he couldn't name, and found Emma already sitting at the kitchen table with Luna perched beside her. "She told me," Emma said simply, not looking up from where she was gently stroking Luna's iridescent feathers. "Not with words, but I knew when I woke up. Today's the day." Luna looked different this morning, more luminous, as if the approaching separation had awakened something ethereal in her nature. Her wings, now fully mature, caught the early light and reflected it back in patterns that reminded Wes of sunlight. On water, she was beautiful and alien, and somehow already beginning to fade from their immediate reality. "Are you okay?" Wes asked Emma, settling into his chair and accepting Luna's gentle nuzzle against his hand. "I'm sad," Emma admitted, her honesty as clear as always. "But I'm also grateful. And I think that's what Luna wants us to feel. Sadness, mixed with thankfulness. Not the kind of sadness that breaks you." The wisdom in his daughter's words took Wes's breath away. At 10 years old, she understood concepts that many adults struggled with. That grief could coexist with gratitude. That endings could be meaningful without being tragic. That love transcended physical presence. Luna began to sing, and the melody that filled their kitchen was unlike anything she'd shared before. It started as a single, pure note that seemed to resonate in their bones, then expanded into harmonies that shouldn't have been possible from one small throat. The song spoke of journeys completed and journeys beginning, of love given and love received, of the eternal cycle that connected all living things. As she sang, Luna began to glow more brightly, her feathers taking on an opalescent quality that made her appear almost translucent. The transformation was gradual but unmistakable. She was preparing to return to wherever guardians went when their work was finished. "I finished my letter," Emma said during a pause in Luna's song. She held up several pages covered with her careful handwriting, illustrated with small sketches of their favorite moments together. "Should I read it to her?" Wes nodded, his throat too tight for words. Emma cleared her throat and began. "Dear Luna, I know you have to leave soon, and I want you to know that's okay. Great-great-grandfather's journal says the guardians always know when it's time to go home, and I can see in your eyes that you're ready." Luna chirped softly, encouraging Emma to continue. "You came when Daddy and I forgot how to be happy. We were so sad about Mummy that we couldn't remember all the good things she taught us. But you helped us remember that being sad doesn't mean we can't also be grateful for all the love we had." Wes watched Luna's reaction to Emma's words, marveling at the obvious intelligence in her violet eyes. She understood every word, every emotion behind the words, in ways that transcended ordinary communication. "You taught us how to cook together again, how to laugh together, how to take care of each other the way Mommy would have wanted. You helped." Daddy smiled for real, not just the pretend smiles he used when he thought I wasn't looking. That observation hit Wes like a gentle blow. He hadn't realized Emma had been so aware of his struggled attempts to appear normal during those dark months. Before Luna's arrival, most importantly, Emma continued, you showed us that love doesn't end when someone goes away. Mommy's love is still here, in the recipes she left us, and the memories we share, and the way she taught us to be kind to each other. Your love will still be here too, even after you're gone. Luna's song rose in response, weaving around Emma's words like a musical embrace. The sound filled not just the kitchen, but seemed to permeate the entire house, blessing every room where they'd shared moments of healing and hope. I drew pictures of all my favorite times with you, Emma said, showing Luna the illustrations. In her letter, you hatching from that big egg, you learning to fly around the kitchen, you helping me with homework, you making Daddy laugh when he was paying bills. Each sketch was remarkably detailed, capturing not just Luna's physical appearance, but something of her essential spirit, her curiosity, her gentleness, her mysterious wisdom. I want you to know that we're going to be okay after you leave. We're not the same people we were when you found us. We know how to be happy again, how to take care of each other, how to believe in tomorrow. The transformation in Luna was accelerating now. Her outline was becoming less distinct, as if she were made of morning mist rather than flesh and feather. But her eyes remained clear and focused, full of love and something that might have been pride. Thank you for choosing us, Emma concluded, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. Thank you for staying just long enough to help us remember who we were supposed to be. We love you and will never forget you. Luna's final gift came as Emma finished reading. The little creature rose from the table and performed one last dance. Not the playful hops and wing flaps they'd grown accustomed to, but something far more graceful and profound. She moved through the air like liquid light, her wings creating patterns that seemed to paint blessings on the morning air. Then she settled on the windowsill where she'd spent so many hours watching the world outside, and sang a song of such impure beauty that both Wes and Emma felt their hearts might break from the joy of it. As the last note faded, Luna looked at them both with infinite tenderness. Her form was becoming increasingly translucent, but her presence still filled the room with warmth and peace. We love you too, Wes managed to say, his voice rough with emotion. Thank you for everything, Luna chirped once more, a sound of acknowledgement and farewell, then spread her wings wide. The morning light streaming through the window seemed to gather around her, lifting her gently from the sill. She hovered there for a moment, suspended between their world and whatever realm awaited her, beautiful and otherworldly, and already becoming part of memory. Then with a final flash of iridescent light, she was gone. The new chicken coop rose from the same ground where Luna had first been discovered, but it bore no resemblance to the weathered structure that had housed their dwindling flock during those dark months of grief and struggle. Wes and Emma worked side by side in the crisp December air, their breath visible in small puffs as they fitted the final boards into place. "Hand me that hammer, Em," Wes said, holding a support beam steady while Emma scrambled to help. Building the coop together had been Emma's idea, proposed 3 days after Luna's departure, when the silence in their kitchen had grown too profound to ignore. "We should make something," she'd said with the practical wisdom that had become her trademark, "something that shows we're not just sitting around being sad." The project had become more than construction. It was reconstruction of their lives, their relationship, their understanding of what family meant in the absence of those they'd lost. Each nail driven, each board measured and cut, each small decision made together had woven them closer, creating something stronger than what had come before. "Remember when Luna used to perch right here?" Emma asked, pointing to the spot where they were installing a new roosting bar. "She always wanted to supervise everything we did." Wes smiled at the memory. The pain of missing Luna was real, but manageable, tempered by gratitude for what she'd given them and the knowledge that her departure meant their healing was complete. She was quite the little foreman, wasn't she? They'd talked extensively about Luna in the days following her departure, not with the desperate clinging of people unwilling to let go, but with the fond remembrance of those who understood that love transcends physical presence. Emma's sketch journal had become a treasured record of their time together, each drawing a window into a period of transformation neither of them would ever forget. The farm around them bore testament to that transformation. The chickens they'd replaced were healthy and productive, their eggs commanding premium prices at the local market. The vegetable garden, cleared and replanted, was prepared for spring planting. Most remarkably, Wes had been able to hire help, a local teenager named Jake, who came 3 afternoons a week to assist with the heavier work. "Dad," Emma said, the word coming more naturally now that she'd begun to heal, "do you think Luna knew this would happen? That we'd be okay without her?" Wes considered the question as he secured a hinge on the coop's door. The structure they were building was solid, functional and beautiful, designed to last for decades and house chickens through whatever challenges the future might bring. Like their family, it was built to endure. "I think Luna knew exactly what we needed," he said finally. "Not just her presence, but the confidence that we could handle her absence." Emma nodded, satisfied with his answer. At 10, she possessed an emotional maturity that amazed everyone who knew her. Her teacher, Dr. Martinez, the neighbors who commented on her poise and kindness. The grief of losing her mother hadn't disappeared, but it had been transformed from a crushing weight into something more manageable, a gentle sadness that coexisted with joy and hope. "I want to tell you something," Emma said, settling cross-legged in the grass beside the nearly completed coop. "Something I've been thinking about since Luna left." Wes put down his tools and gave her his full attention, recognizing the serious tone that preceded her most important observations. "I used to think that when people died or went away, the love went with them," Emma said, her words careful and considered. "Like love was something that could only exist when people were together. But Luna taught me that's not true." She gestured toward the coop, toward the thriving farm around them, toward the life they'd rebuilt together. "All the love is still here. Mommy's love, Luna's love, our love for each other. It just changed shape." The profundity of her insight took Wes's breath away. She had articulated something he'd been struggling to understand, that love was not diminished by distance or death, but transformed into something more durable and pervasive. "That's exactly right," he said, his voice thick with pride and emotion. "Love changes shape, but it never disappears." They worked in comfortable silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts, but connected by the shared purpose of their task. The coop was nearly finished. It would be ready for occupancy by evening, a new beginning built on the foundation of what they'd learned. As the afternoon sun began to sink toward the hills, Rebecca's car appeared in their driveway. Her visits had become a weekly tradition, ostensibly to check on Emma's continued progress, but really because all 3 of them had come to value the friendship that had developed among them. "How's the construction project coming?" she called, climbing out of her car with a thermos of hot chocolate and a bag of homemade cookies. "Almost finished," Emma announced proudly, scrambling up to show off their handiwork. "Daddy says it's the finest chicken coop in 3 counties. Rebecca examined their work with appropriate admiration, asking technical questions that made Emma beam with pride. Her presence had become another source of stability in their lives, not a replacement for Sarah, but something entirely new and valuable. "You two make quite a team," Rebecca observed, settling on the porch steps with her hot chocolate. "This is beautiful work. We learned we're good at building things together," Wes said, accepting a cup of the steaming beverage. "Not just chicken coops, other things too." The conversation that followed was easy and natural, ranging from Emma's latest school projects to Wes's plans for expanding the farm's operations, to Rebecca's stories about her other clients and their various challenges. They had become, without quite acknowledging it formally, something very much like a family. As evening approached and Rebecca prepared to leave, Emma made an announcement that surprised both adults. "I want to have a party," she said, "a celebration for finishing the Coop, but also for everything else, for learning how to be happy again." The idea was perfect in its simplicity, a celebration not of Luna's departure, but of what her presence had made possible, their healing, their renewed hope, their rediscovered ability to embrace life fully. "I think that's a wonderful idea," Rebecca said, glancing at Wes for confirmation. "A celebration it is," Wes agreed, realizing as he said it that he was genuinely excited about the prospect. The man who had hidden from social contact for 2 years was looking forward to sharing their joy with others. That night, as they prepared for bed in their newly peaceful home, Emma made one final observation about their day. "Building something together is different from just doing things at the same time," she said, brushing her teeth at the bathroom sink. "When we were building the Coop, it felt like we were building our family too." Wes nodded, understanding perfectly. The physical act of construction had been a metaphor for the emotional rebuilding they'd accomplished, not just returning to who they'd been before Sarah's death, but becoming something stronger and more resilient. Outside their window, the new chicken coop stood ready to shelter whatever came next. Like their family, it was built to last. Sturdy enough to weather future storms, spacious enough to accommodate growth, beautiful enough to be a source of daily joy rather than mere utility. They had learned to build with love, to construct hope. From the materials of their shared experience, to create futures worth living from the lessons of their past. And in learning those skills, they had discovered something Luna had always known, that the most important construction happens not with hammer and nails, but with patience and presence and the courage to believe in tomorrow. The new family portrait sat on the mantelpiece where Sarah's individual photo had held vigil for 2 years, but instead of replacing that cherished memory, it seemed to embrace and extend it. Emma stood between Wes and Rebecca in the spring sunshine, all 3 of them, laughing at something Jake had said from behind the camera. The farmhouse rose behind them, freshly painted and welcoming, its windows bright with the flowers Rebecca had helped them plant. 6 months had passed since Luna's departure, and the transformation was complete in ways that still amazed Wes when he stopped to consider them. The failing farm had become a thriving operation, the broken family had learned to be whole again, and the man who had forgotten how to hope had discovered that second chances sometimes came disguised as mysterious eggs in chicken coops. "Tell me again about the Guardian," Emma said, settling beside him on the porch swing with her latest sketch pad. At nearly 11, she had grown taller and more confident, her artwork evolving from simple documentation to sophisticated studies of light and movement. The local art teacher had mentioned the possibility of a scholarship to a summer program for gifted students. "Which part?" Wes asked, though he knew the story by heart now. Emma never tired of hearing about Luna, and he never tired of telling it. "The part about how we knew she was different from the very beginning," Emma said, her pencil already moving across the paper as she drew Luna from memory. Luna perched on the windowsill, Luna dancing in the kitchen, Luna teaching them to hope again. "Well," Wes began, settling into the familiar rhythm of their shared story, "we knew she was special because she arrived exactly when we needed her most, and she stayed just long enough to help us remember who we were supposed to be." The farm around them hummed with quiet activity. Jake was finishing his chores in the new chicken coop, the sound of contented birds mixing with his cheerful whistling. Rebecca was in the kitchen, putting finishing touches on the dinner she'd insisted on preparing as a surprise for Wes's 55th birthday. The scene was domestic and peaceful, filled with the kind of everyday magic Sarah had always insisted was the most important kind. "Do you think Luna knows how happy we are?" Emma asked, adding delicate shading to her drawing. "I think Luna knows exactly how we're doing," Wes replied, meaning it completely. Sometimes, in the early morning light or the soft glow of evening, he caught glimpses of iridescence in the air around the farm. Not Luna herself, but something that carried her essence. The guardians, it seemed, never completely left the families they'd helped to heal. The kitchen door opened, and Rebecca emerged, with a birthday cake blazing with candles, Jake following behind with plates and forks. The celebration was simple but perfect, exactly the kind of low-key gathering that felt right for their reconstituted family. "Make a wish, Dad," Emma said, the word coming naturally now. She had begun calling Rebecca Mom Rebecca, with the same ease, creating new traditions that honored the past while embracing the future. Wes looked around at the faces surrounding him. Emma, radiant with health and happiness. Rebecca glowing with the contentment of someone who had found her place. Jake grinning with the enthusiasm of youth, and realized he had everything he could possibly wish for. But he made a wish anyway, the same wish he'd been making for months. That Luna was safe and happy wherever Guardians went when their work was finished, and that somehow she knew how profoundly she had changed their lives. As he blew out the candles, a gentle breeze stirred the air around the porch, carrying with it the faintest hint of the song Luna used to sing. Emma looked up from her drawing with a knowing smile. "She heard you," she said simply. Later that evening, after Jake had gone home and Rebecca had retired to the guest room that was increasingly becoming just her room, Wes and Emma sat together in the kitchen where their story had begun. The recipe box held a place of honor on the counter, filled now with both Sarah's cherished cards and new creations they'd developed together. The old farm bell hung silent but ready outside the window, waiting to call them to the next meal, the next celebration, the next moment of ordinary joy. "Dad," Emma said, closing her sketchpad and preparing for bed, "what do you think would have happened if we hadn't found Luna, if she hadn't found us?" It was a question Wes had pondered many times, usually late at night when the house was quiet, and memories rose like mist from the shadows. The answer was both simple and profound. "I think we would have survived," he said honestly, "but I don't think we would have learned to live again. There's a difference between getting through each day and actually being alive." Emma nodded, understanding the distinction with the wisdom that had become her trademark. "Luna taught us the difference." She did indeed. As they prepared for bed, following routines that had become as natural as breathing, Emma paused at the kitchen window. Outside, the chicken coop stood sturdy and welcoming, its windows glowing with warm light. Beyond it, the fields stretched toward the hills, productive and peaceful under the star-scattered sky. "Do you think we'll see her again?" Emma asked softly. "Luna, I mean. Maybe when we're really old, or if something terrible happens?" Wes considered the question seriously. The journal had suggested that guardians appeared when families faced their darkest moments, but it had also hinted at other possibilities: reunions, celebrations, moments of pure joy that called them back across whatever distances separated the mundane world from their mystical realm. "I don't know," he said finally, "but I hope so. And I think if we ever need her again, really need her, she'll find a way to come back." Emma smiled, satisfied with that answer. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, sweetheart. Sweet dreams." As Wes turned off the kitchen lights and headed upstairs, he caught sight of their reflection in the darkened window. A father and daughter who had learned to be happy again, who had discovered that love could transform any loss into the foundation for new beginnings. The farmhouse settled around them with the comfortable sounds of a home well lived in. Rebecca's gentle breathing from the guest room, Emma's soft humming as she settled into bed, the familiar creaks and sighs of old wood adjusting to the night air. Outside, a gentle breeze stirred the leaves of the oak trees Sarah had loved, carrying with it the promise of tomorrow and all the tomorrows that would follow. In the chicken coop, something moved in the shadows. Not a guardian, but something equally precious. Another egg, larger than normal and warm to the touch, had appeared in the farthest corner. Not for them, perhaps, but for some future generation of Holloways who would need to learn that miracles could be small and quiet and still change everything. Wes discovered it the next morning during his routine check of the birds, and this time he wasn't surprised. He simply smiled, made a note to watch for signs of hatching, and went about the business of living the full, rich life that Luna had helped him remember was possible. After all, hope had many forms, and love never truly ended. It just changed shape and waited for the right moment to reveal itself again.